This is my update for Russian military operations in Ukraine for May 21st, 2022. And as I always do, I'm going to take a look at the map. This is liveuamap.com. It is very pro-Ukrainian, pro-US, pro-NATO. So keep that in mind when we take a look at it. But it'll give us a quick overview, and then I will get into a Pentagon, actually two Pentagon briefings and a Washington-based think tank, their assessment for recent developments in Ukraine. So let's take a look at this map. This is Ukraine overall. Everything in red is held by Russia. And as I explain every update, right now the focus is in the east, the Donbas region. So Russian-held cities like Kherson, this is just them holding this city and preparing the battlefield for the eventual advance towards Nikolaev, and beyond that, Odessa, and beyond that, Transnistria. If we go east to Mariupol, the remaining Ukrainian militants hiding underground in the Azovstal steelworks, this industrial complex here, they have all unconditionally surrendered. And just to give you an idea about this map is always going to report every single rumor or misstep by Russia, and they will delay reporting anything negative in regards to Ukraine's progress on the battlefield for as long as possible. So even the Western media has admitted that the Azovstal, the militants in the Azovstal steelworks, they have all unconditionally surrendered. They're out of there. That is over. Even Ukraine admits their combat operations have ended, when in reality they were just hiding in the basements for weeks and weeks. Since mid-April to the end of April, Russia had complete control over Mariupol. There was no contesting Mariupol at that point. And yet Ukraine and the Pentagon insisted that Mariupol was still a contested city. So just keep that in mind when looking at this map. They still show this as, they have the red flag there, but they're still showing it as contested. Now, even this pro-Ukrainian map cannot pretend that things are going well in the Donbas region. This salient around Popasnaya, which Russia liberated relatively recently, it has grown both in the western direction and to the north. And if you look at what they're doing to the north, they're closing this gap, and they are going to encircle all of these forces, these Ukrainian forces, in the Severodonetsk and Lysychansk built up urban areas, these city areas. They are going to encircle and enclose them in there, and they will either be destroyed or they will be given the chance to surrender. Now, to the northeast, just as predicted, this so-called Kharkov offensive has completely stalled, if not begun the process of reversing. And I explained how this was purely political on the part of Ukraine. They reached the border here. They had a mock-up of a border marker. They took pictures with it, and then they ran away. That was the whole point of that. The Russian forces outside of Kharkov, they're not trying to take the city. They're fixing Ukrainian troops in that area. They don't care how close to Kharkov they are or how close to the Russian border they are. As long as they stay there and they don't go to the Donbas region, those Russian forces are succeeding in their fixing operation. Ukraine needed some sort of victory because they couldn't get a strategic victory on the battlefield. They did this highly symbolic victory, which was them taking a picture at the border and then promptly leaving the position and giving it back up to Russia. That's how bad it is for Ukraine, that's what they need to do to show some sort of progress. Likewise, for Mariupol, they keep using this word evacuation. They're not being evacuated. They surrendered to Russia. All of those fighters, hundreds if not thousands of them now, have surrendered unconditionally to Russia. They are now either in a Russian-held hospital or a Russian-held detention center. They are not going back to Ukrainian-held territory unless Russia allows them to. So that's a look at the map. That's basically what's going on. And if you look at the sources here, it's all pro-Ukrainian sources, if not the Ukrainian general staff themselves or the Pentagon. So just keep all of that in mind when you're looking at this map. But still, I think we have a good idea of what's going on. Now, we're going to start with this. Pentagon Press Secretary John F. Kirby holds a press briefing. This was May 20th, 2022. And I'm also going to, in the middle of this, switch over to this one. Senior defense official holds a background briefing May 19th, 2022. So let's get into that. So there was a question from the media, and it was on Ukraine as a whole. Shoigu has said, I think today the liberation of Luhansk is nearing completion. Do you have sort of a broad sense about how much of Ukraine Russia now controls and what that says about the state of the war right now? Because the Western media has been telling others and maybe telling themselves that Ukraine has been winning, that Russia is losing, and yet all of Luhansk, there's Donetsk and Luhansk in the Donbas region, all of Luhansk is almost under complete Russian control now. How is that possible if Ukraine is winning? How is it that Russia is continuously making progress on the battlefield? Well, John Kirby, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby, says the Russians are still well behind where we believe they wanted to be when they started this revitalized effort in the eastern part of the country. And while they have made, and we have to be very honest about this, they have made some incremental progress in the Donbas. It is incremental, it is slow, it's uneven, and the Ukrainians continue to push back. Well, they don't push back, they're fighting, but they're not pushing back. They are being pushed out of the Donbas region incrementally. The reason why it's slow and uneven is because it's a 300-kilometer plus front line, and it is intense artillery fire on both sides. That's why it's slow and incremental, because that is the very nature of the warfare. And in previous updates, I have cited the Pentagon saying as much. Now, we've probably heard about the Black Sea and the U.S. allegedly planning to send anti-ship missiles to Ukraine. Well, as I've said in the past, sending sophisticated heavy weapon systems to Ukraine has a huge number of problems. It will take months, if not longer, to train Ukrainian service members to operate it. They will never operate it proficiently because that takes years to do, to be able to do it efficiently, reliably, and to integrate it into combined arms warfare. That takes years to perfect, and they don't have years to perfect it. There's also all kinds of technical challenges that they have to overcome, as well as maintenance. Who's going to repair this if anything goes wrong on it? So they're talking about Harpoon anti-ship missiles. There may be some others that they're thinking about handing over to them, but Harpoon missiles have a range of something like 120, 130 kilometers, which is not enough to break the Black Sea blockade. Also, and as John Kirby points out, he says, there's submarines in the Black Sea. Russia has submarines in the Black Sea, and Harpoon missiles and any other anti-ship missile isn't going to do much against submarines. So the idea of breaking the blockade or sinking the fleet, that is unrealistic. It will not happen. What Ukraine might do is get a few more symbolic wins where they'll manage to hit a ship and light it on fire or sink it. But again, as I pointed out, when the UK found itself in the war with Argentina, the Falklands War in the 1980s, they lost several ships and they still won that. So sinking ships, again, this is all Ukraine can do, these symbolic victories, because actual victory on the battlefield is beyond their grasp. Now, someone else from the media asks a question. John Kirby's responding about tanks and planes not being sent in the large numbers that I guess some people expected them to be sent. And John Kirby says, the reason you're not hearing about like tanks and airplanes is because I'm not saying that they're not being used, don't get me wrong. It's just that the main need that the Ukrainians continue to stress is for long-range fires. Again, it's an artillery battle. And rockets and missiles, and Ukraine is on the losing end of this. They're on the losing end of this. They are outgunned by Russia by far, and what they had at the beginning of this and at the end of February is all disappearing. It's in the process of disappearing. And so this is why Kirby says all of that talk about Stingers and Javelins, that's gone, because those are useless in this type of warfare. They don't have nearly enough range to make any sort of impact on this type of battlefield. And he says that's why the focus has shifted to M777s, M777 Howitzers, these howitzers that the U.S. has sent about In total, about 190 from the US and several from Canada and Australia, totaling 100. And now they're talking about sending 50 more. And some bad news for people who had their hopes pinned on M777s. Russia has already found them on the battlefield in the Donbas region. They've tracked them, they've targeted them, and they've blown them up and their crews. So that's what's going on. And I want to show you this. This is from a website called Southfront. And if you haven't heard of Southfront before, the link will be in the video description below. It is an indispensable resource. I would say leaning heavily toward the Russian side, but they will tell you things that if you're rooting for Russia, that you probably don't want to hear. So I would say they're more or less fair compared to pro-Ukrainian sources. But anyway, here in video, Russian drone artillery destroy Ukraine's new M777 Howitzers. And it shows a video here of them finding them and destroying them. And now, here's the thing. I've heard people kind of freaking out over the US sending these weapons, the West sending these weapons, and these weapons making their way to the front line. Now, there are certain weapon systems that Russia will invest heavily in tracking into the country and eliminating as soon as possible. But something like an M777 howitzer, this is a lightweight towed artillery piece. You could put it at the back of a truck, you can put it on a flatbed, you can put it on a train, and you can conceal it in many different ways where you wouldn't even really know what it was while it was in transit. A number of them, I mean, there's 90 of them from the US alone. They're gonna go across the country, and they're not gonna like do a parade from one side of Ukraine to the other to the front line. And they're gonna be moving the whole time, more or less. So if you're talking about Russia using cruise missiles, because that's really one of the few options they have available to them to hit these weapon systems as they come into Ukraine, in Western Ukraine, to hit them while they're on the move, that's very unrealistic. And the chances of hitting them and destroying them are, I would say, not very good. In other words, you have very few options and very few opportunities to hit them as they're traveling across Ukraine. Now, when they arrive at the battlefield, the second they start firing, Russian counter-battery radar is going to see those rounds incoming and trace them back to where those rounds are coming from. Also, Russia has a huge number of drones up in the air constantly surveying the battlefield. They're going to find them just like they did in this video. That means there are, and Russia has its aviation up in the air looking for targets and striking targets. So you have many options and many more opportunities to find these howitzers. This allows Russia to use its own artillery, drones, and aviation to destroy these weapons. And that is exactly what they're doing. And that is what they have been doing throughout this entire fight. 100, 150, 200 M777s is not going to turn the tide for Ukraine. Russia outguns them by far. And there's nothing that the US and the rest of NATO can send to Ukraine that will have any reasonable chance of changing that equation. I understand why people get frustrated or have serious doubts, but warfare is also a game of patience. It is a game of patience. Sometimes you have to just wait until the opportunity is just right when you're looking at the big picture here. So there was that. And now I'm going to jump to this other briefing from May 19th. They also talk about the M777s, and someone even asks about that footage of Russia destroying them. And they even said, I saw this footage of, Russia destroying these M777s, and they're asking the senior defense official about that. They're wondering how that's possible. If the US trained them, shouldn't they be keeping them out of range of Russian artillery? But that's the thing. The M777 doesn't have any special capability that Russia lacks. Russia has artillery that has similar capabilities to the M777. Russia also has huge numbers of rockets that have in even further range than the M777. They also have ballistic missiles that have a longer range than the M777. They also have all of their aviation up in the air. Ukraine does not. So these are all huge advantages that Russia has. The M777 does absolutely nothing to negate. So the senior defense official says, so that's why the training can be done as quickly as it can be done. But in the training of the M777s, the Ukrainians often do pose to their instructors, you know, hypothetical scenarios about how you would use it in this case or that case. And so, I mean, they know what they're up against. We're pulling the artillerymen out of the fight to learn these howitzers and then putting them back in, which again reveals a significant weakness amid Ukraine's efforts here. These are trained artillerymen that are learning this second piece of hardware in addition to whatever they were taught on when they became artillerymen in the first place. To create a basic artilleryman, that takes months of training. Just an entry-level artilleryman. And then it takes months or years for artillerymen to develop the skills that they need for, you know, tactics, strategy, and leadership on the battlefield. When they go down with these M777s, when Russia finds them and destroys them and kills the crew along with them, you can't replace them. Even if you have more howitzers to send, you don't have replacements for these artillerymen. They're gone. You cannot build an army out of thin air. It takes years to build an effective army. It took 8 years for the US and NATO to create the army that Ukraine is losing this war with. They do not have time now in the middle of a war to even replace what they had, let alone surpass what they started with on February 24th. This is all things that people need to keep in mind when they're reading these headlines and they see these developments. Now, this other briefing from the Pentagon, they also go over other updates that John Kirby did not. Ukraine admitting that combat operations around Mariupol have ended. Yes, obviously. And it's over 2,000 prisoners. But if we go over to here, this is the Institute for the Study of War. And they say the International Red Cross says it's hundreds. And Russia says that it's over 1,000, maybe 2,000. And they said the International Red Cross, they might just be giving you their current number and they need to update the registered number of prisoners of war. But they're prisoners of war. And even the Institute for the Study of War is using this word evacuation. It is not an evacuation. They have surrendered. They're being taken prisoner. The senior defense official, back to this Pentagon briefing, is talking about the Kharkov offensive. And they're talking about it, but they said there's no updates, which means at the very least it's stalled. They're making no more progress. They're just stuck out there. And if anything, they're being rolled back. As we saw in that, the pro-Ukrainian map is showing you that they've been rolled back in certain places. Someone in the media asks a senior defense official about Russia running out of combat power, because we keep hearing this, that this is their last offensive. After they're done in the Donbas region, they're done. They have no more combat capacity after that. And this is what the Pentagon senior defense official says. The Russians still have available to them a significant amount of their amassed combat capability from back in the fall. And that means just what they prepared for going into Ukraine with, not what they have across all of Russia, just what they prepared ahead of these operations in Ukraine. He says they still have a numerical advantage. They still have a lot more in military capability available to them. I mean, we just need to bear in mind that the Russians do have a significant amount of their combat capability left to them. In other words, they're not going to stop anytime soon. They're not going to run out of bullets. They're not going to run out of missiles. They're not going to run out of tanks or artillery anytime soon. Ukraine already is. And just from there, use your logic and follow what that means. So that about does it for this update. I just thought it was really important to show that right now in the Donbas region, Russia is making a lot of progress very quickly, much quicker than I've seen in the past. And that's even according to the pro-Ukrainian, this liveuamap.com. Even according to them, Russia is making very fast progress. Like, this updates a couple of times a day now, and it is expanding west and to the north. This from Popasnaya. Encircling Ukrainian forces in Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, this urban area here. This is all being enclosed. That's according to the pro-Ukrainian liveuamap.com. So keep an eye on the Donbas region. That is where Russia's primary focus is on. Everything else is secondary. They're trying to just hold Kherson. They're not planning to take Mykolaiv anytime soon. They're not trying to take Kharkov. They're not trying to do anything else except hold what they have and secure the Donbas region. That is the primary objective. So if you see Ukraine trying to operate elsewhere outside of the Donbas region and say, oh, look, we did that. That is our success. It's because they cannot succeed where it matters most, in the Donbas region, and they need symbolic victories for purely propaganda purposes, nothing to do with strategy. And once Russia is done and the Donbas region, they will have all of these freed up forces to go and focus on another primary objective. Maybe Kharkov city, maybe Mykolaiv, and then Odessa. I don't know. I think the facts on the ground will determine where Russia goes next. This is how they fought in Syria from 2015 onward and helped Syria and its other allies take city after city after city. All of Syria's major population centers are back under Syrian control. And that was with Russia's help going through this very same process. So I hope that helps understand what's going on in Ukraine now at the moment. If anything major happens, I'll do another update, or maybe it'll be a couple of more days until I do another one. Until then, if you thought this was useful, please like and share. Think about subscribing. It's free to do and it helps the channel grow. If you're watching this on YouTube, check the video description below for other places you can find and follow my work. I'm on Odyssey, I'm on Rumble, I'm also on Telegram, just in case YouTube decides to delete my channel for some reason. In the video description below, you will find all of the links that I referenced making this video, as well as for ways you can help support my work. You can do that through Buy Me a Coffee, through Patreon, and also through PayPal. To everyone who has been helping out month to month, or through one-time donations, or even if you're just helping share my work with others, sending kind words or news tips, I appreciate all of that help. I couldn't do this without it. So thank you. And as always, thank you for watching.